apparel consumption, production, exports and imports, you see there is drastic changes happening across the globe. I could never imagine a situation when one of the largest importing countries of the world, let's say European Union, today more than 50% of its import basket is coming through intra-EU trade. How this could happen? Because the fundamental dynamics about apparel manufacturing depends on a couple of important factors, including we talk about economical labor force. One of the key factors in the availability of key labor force. But how could I see Germany becoming one of the major apparel manufacturing hub, Poland coming up as an apparel manufacturing hub, Spain coming as an apparel manufacturing hub, Portugal coming as an apparel manufacturing hub? And what will happen to countries like, let us say, the South Asian countries like India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, China, or Myanmar, or Cambodia, Indonesia, and Pakistan? What will happen to? More than 60% of the apparel exports in the world is coming from this particular region. So what's going to be the future of this region? And if I see Odisha in the context of that, so how are we going to deal with this situation? And tomorrow, if I look at the scenario, I see the same phenomena is also taking place in the North America, particularly the US. Manufacturing is predominantly becoming a phenomenon of nearshoring. Some have started offshoring also. I will give you examples of it. And not only nearshoring, they are strategically moving out. They call it, proximity sourcing. Coming closer to the market. Are you closer to the market? If not, you have to build your competitive edge to having the trade-off between the cost of producing in the nearby countries or in their own country and producing in the state like Odisha or a country like India. Despite the opportunities, I tell you, the performance of the country, and if you look at the state, I should not say miserable, but it is stagnating. We are not doing good. And we have never analyzed the reasons for why we are not performing to the expectations. We have never gone beyond $41, $42 billion of exports, combined textiles and apparel. And it is stagnating for more than a decade or so. Is apparel manufacturing in Odisha and the country meant for domestic consumptions? Even if the domestic market is so huge, I know you have enough space for making money in the country itself. Every sixth person on this planet is an Indian. You have got an opportunity. And putting together the Indian diaspora, huge Indian diaspora, you have opportunities. But is it your target? How about the relevance of this sector in terms of export earnings? How are you going to position this industry there? We have opportunities. How do you see it? So what is happening now in Bangladesh, or what is happening now in Cambodia, or in Myanmar? So when we predicted many things long back, let's say I'm talking about 2011, there was a survey we did with CPOs, Chief Procurement Officers of a vast majority of the top industries. They all referred that the next best sourcing destinations for apparel are going to be the East African countries. They named the 4 countries like Ethiopia and one of them, and Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. When I look back, we have spent almost 14 years experimenting with these countries, and they stand nowhere today. Probably we missed out something that is important. We have not taken those things into consideration. That is why these countries have miserably failed. If you look at Ethiopia, because both of us, Bebhuti ji and myself, we lived in Ethiopia for almost 4 or 5 years. So when you look at how the industry projected the country, but the exports have not gone beyond even $1 billion so far. Very unfortunate. And you see almost all the investments, even from India, we find more than 25 investments in Ethiopia. You find investment from Turkey, investment Bangladesh, DVL has also invested there. Why it is not happening? And even if the labor cost, there is a huge labor cost differential. You pay $50, you get a operator there. Now probably $60, $70. It's not gone beyond. And in a perspective, if you want to look at China, today, the wage cost has almost more than, I think, 5 times more than Bangladesh. But still, China is the largest exporter of the world in apparels today. The same phenomena is visible there in Europe. Why Germany is performing, or why Italy is doing good, or why Poland has started, setting up a manufacturing hub, or why Spain. You take the example of Inditex. The Zara has started. Almost more than 30% of its manufacturing is taking place in that country only. They've created a very dedicated corridor at Zaragoza, somewhere between the Valenciaga and in Madrid. There's a place called Zaragoza. The concept is called Cube. So they are fighting it out and to remain competitive and targeting the climate change goals. They have promised net zero by 2050. So like India is 2060 and US 2050 and China 2060. So the trade-off has to be understood. That what is my economic cost versus my environmental cost. They're looking at if the economic cost is 20% higher than or 30% higher than producing in their own country or nearby countries. Let us take the example of Tunisia or Morocco, the North African manufacturing hubs. No matter, even if the manufacturing cost or the economic cost is 20%, 25%, 30% higher, but the environmental cost, in order to meet the net zero targets, is definitely lower. They have to pay even less transportation cost. What about the carbon emissions and all? So they are aligning or realigning their manufacturing practices, their sourcing practices accordingly. So if India ever, or a state like Odisha, despite all the opportunities we talk, all the advantages of apparel manufacturing and textile manufacturing in the state, having a 480 kilometers of coastline and all those resources, cheap labor and quality electricity and everything. But still, is that enough to create the required ecosystem to position Odisha, which is one of the garment manufacturing and exporting hubs? At least as the government says that in the eastern region, is the ecosystem that we have created enough for it? That the industry people would be knowing and they can justify it, whether it is actually enough or not. So what needs to be done? What more can be done? Have you ever been, as a community, discussed about it? When I look back at the policy in, let's say, the Apparel and Technical Textile Policy 2022, when the session talks about inclusivity. So sometimes I ask this question, only the name, I'm not talking about the content and the context of that policy. Is that inclusive? If not, is there a need for the revision of a policy? Can you set clear targets for the state, be it manufacturing targets for apparel?